It sounds like the easiest question in the world. When did humans start cooking? Just find the oldest campfire, read the date off it, and you're done. Except that simple question happens to sit at the center of one of the fiercest, longest-running arguments in all of human origins. An argument where serious scientists disagree not by a few centuries, but by more than 1,000,000 years. One camp says cooking is almost 2,000,000 years old. The other says the hard evidence doesn't appear until a few 100,000 years ago. Both are looking at the same past. Both are convinced the other is wrong. And the reason they can't agree comes down to a single frustrating fact. Fire barely leaves a trace. Think about what a cooking fire actually is. Some wood, some flame, a few hours, and then nothing. The ash blows away. The charcoal washes off in the next rain. A small open fire on a patch of ground can vanish so completely that 10,000 years later there's nothing left to find, let alone 1,000,000. Stone tools survive for eternity because stone is nearly indestructible. But a fire is an event, not an object. So asking when humans first cooked is like asking when someone first told a joke. It clearly happened, it clearly mattered, and it left almost nothing behind for us to dig up. So if the fires themselves are gone, how do you date the invention of cooking? The first camp has a brilliant answer. Don't look for the fire. Look at the body. Because here is something remarkable. Around 1.9 million years ago, a new kind of human appears in the fossil record, and it looks startlingly different from everything before it. Homo erectus arrives with a bigger brain, a taller body, longer legs, and crucially, a much smaller jaw, smaller teeth, and a noticeably shorter gut. That combination is a genuine puzzle. A smaller gut and weaker teeth should be a disaster for a wild animal, because raw food is brutally hard to process. Your closest living relatives, chimpanzees, spend nearly half their waking lives just chewing, grinding through tough raw plants that surrender their calories only under enormous effort. A body with small teeth and a short gut simply cannot survive on that. So something must have been pre-processing the food before it was eaten. Something that softened it, broke it down, and unlocked its energy in advance. And the most powerful candidate for that something is fire. This is the heart of the early argument, championed by Harvard scientist Richard Wrangham. His claim is bold. We did not become smart and then invent cooking. We started cooking, and that is what allowed us to become smart. Cooked food delivers far more usable energy per bite, because heat physically breaks open starches and unravels proteins that raw digestion struggles with. Feed a body that much extra fuel, and you can afford to grow the single most expensive organ we own. Your brain burns roughly a fifth of all your energy while doing absolutely nothing. You cannot run a brain like that on raw leaves and roots, but you can run it on food that fire has already partly digested for you. In this view, the smaller gut and bigger brain of Homo erectus aren't a coincidence. They are the fingerprints of cooking, pressed into our very anatomy almost 2,000,000 years ago. It's an elegant, sweeping theory. There's just one enormous problem. If humans were cooking 2,000,000 years ago, where are the fires? Because when you actually go looking for physical evidence of controlled flame, it shows up embarrassingly late. And this is where the second camp plants its flag. The oldest widely accepted evidence of fire used by human ancestors comes from a cave in South Africa, where scientists found burnt bone and ash sealed in layers dating to around 1,000,000 years ago. Compelling, but still nearly 1,000,000 years after the early camp says cooking began. And even that is contested, because a single scorched layer proves fire was present. It doesn't prove someone was deliberately using it night after night to cook. For that, you need something more convincing. You need a hearth. You need the same spot, used again and again, surrounded by the debris of meals. And when you search for that, the timeline tightens dramatically. At a waterlogged site in Israel, archaeologists uncovered burnt wood, seeds, and flint clustered together in a way that strongly suggests deliberate fire around 750,000 years ago. And more recently, researchers studying fish remains from that same region found chemical signs that the fish had been heated to a controlled temperature, not burned, but cooked, possibly pushing the oldest direct evidence of an actual cooked meal back to roughly 780,000 years ago. At another Israeli cave, A single spot was used as a hearth, over and over, between 300,000 and 400,000 years ago, ringed with cut and heat-treated bone, the unmistakable signature of a dedicated kitchen. But here's the detail the second camp leans on hardest. Fireplaces don't become genuinely common across human sites until only about 400,000 years ago. Before that, evidence is rare, scattered, and fiercely debated. To these researchers, that pattern tells a clear story. Regular, habitual cooking is a surprisingly recent development, not an ancient one. So now you can see the collision. The bodies say almost 2 million years. The fireplaces say a few 100,000. How can both be true? The honest answer is that we don't fully know, and this gap is exactly what the argument is about. The early camp says the missing fires are an illusion of preservation. Small open-air blazes from that deep in the past simply couldn't survive the crushing weight of time, so their absence proves nothing. Of course we don't find million-year-old campfires, they argue. We wouldn't expect to, even if they burned every single night. The late camp answers that this is too convenient. You cannot build a theory on evidence you admit you'll never find. Show us the hearths, they say, and until then, the safe conclusion is that cooking spread late. Both positions are reasonable. Both are held by brilliant people, and the truth may well sit somewhere in between. With fire used occasionally and opportunistically for a very long time, before it became the daily, reliable, everybody-does-it technology we'd recognize as cooking. There's a way to test at least part of this, and it doesn't require a shovel at all. It requires looking at what happens to a human body that stops eating cooked food today. In the modern world, some people commit to eating everything completely raw, nothing heated, ever. And when scientists study them carefully, the results are striking. These people tend to lose weight relentlessly and struggle to hold on to it, because their bodies burn more energy wrestling with raw food than they manage to pull back out of it. In a significant share of women on a strict long-term raw diet, menstruation stops entirely, the body's blunt way of announcing that its energy supply has become too unreliable to support having a child. Sit with what that means. With all the advantages of a modern supermarket, blenders, dried fruit, imported produce available year-round, a fully raw diet still pushes the human body toward an energy deficit. Strip away the supermarket. Drop that same body into the wild with only what it can gather by hand, and raw food alone becomes a slow death sentence. That is the strongest possible hint that our dependence on cooking is not a recent luxury. It is written into how our bodies budget energy at the deepest level. So, when did ancient humans start cooking? The most honest answer is a range with a battle running through the middle of it. The transformation of our bodies points to a beginning somewhere close to 1.9 million years ago, when Homo erectus emerged with the anatomy of a creature that had already outsourced part of its digestion to fire. The surviving fireplaces argue for something far more recent, with truly habitual cooking taking hold only in the last 400,000 years or so. And the gap between those two dates isn't a failure of science, it's a genuine mystery still being fought over in journals and excavation pits right now, one scorched bone at a time. But strip away the argument, and one thing is beyond dispute. At some point, an ancestor of yours took raw food, held it to a flame, and changed what it meant to be human. That single act reshaped the jaw you chew with, shortened the gut you digest with, and freed the enormous flood of energy that built the brain you are using to follow these words. Cooking is older than farming by roughly 1 million years, older than cities, older than writing, quite possibly older than language itself. So the next time you stand over a stove, half paying attention, waiting for something to sizzle or boil or brown, understand that you are performing the oldest, deeply human ritual there is. Not a chore. A ceremony that stretches back through an unbroken line of hungry ancestors to a single fire on the African plains, more than 1 million years ago, where one of them discovered that heat makes food into something more. You are still doing exactly what they did. You always have been.